Okay, so today we're going to continue our micro review, which I want to note, this should be just a review, so I'm not going in depth too much here. I just want to get you sort of up to speed, just in case you haven't been thinking about economics 24 hours a day for the last few semesters. Okay, so this is just a review, not meant to insult your intelligence or be a full review or a substitute for taking 222. Okay, so if you haven't taken micro, please consider it very strongly. So today we're going to be building sort of the demand and supply model. And we're going to start off talking about demand. Okay, so the demand curve represents the willingness of consumers to buy a product, regardless of what that product is, at all given prices. Okay, and so what it is it's a relationship between the price of something and the quantity that we buy. Okay, so the price of the good and the quantity that we purchase. Okay, in the context of labor, what this means is it's the price or the employer's willingness to purchase labor from workers. Okay, so employers buy your work, right? And if you are ever an employer, someday you will be purchasing other people's work, or more accurately, their time. Okay, and so what we have is sort of a downward sloping curve, all right, which reflects this idea called diminishing marginal utility, which is just fancy economist speech for the idea that each additional unit, remember thinking at the margin here, each additional unit of the good brings less utility or less happiness or less value than the one before. Okay, and so as a result of this, employers are willing to hire more labor at low prices and less labor at high prices. Okay, now intuitively, this shouldn't sound very contentious, right? And it probably reflects exactly what all of us do in our everyday lives, right? When things are on sale, for example, so if the price, let's say the price is here, so at this price, we come over here and we could find exactly how many things we will buy, right? At P1, we buy Q1 units of this good, and if there's a sale, let's say it's 50% off, right? So 50% off sale, right? Well, suddenly we're buying more stuff, right? So at low prices, we buy more stuff, and at higher prices, we buy less. Okay, and let's say there's a special tax or something that was placed, and it made the price really expensive, right? Well, all of a sudden we would see that we buy less. Okay, so at different prices, we buy different quantities of the good. Now, this leads to a very important distinction between what we call demand and quantity demanded. Okay, demand is sort of like this entire line here, right? All of this whole curve here, that's the demand. Okay, and quantity demand is like the amount, right? It's the amount that people actually purchase. Okay, so in a different way, the demand curve, or demand as a concept, represents consumers' willingness to buy at various prices, and we can express this as an equation. So this one might be, let's see, I don't know, P equals 10 minus Q. Right, that could be a demand equation right there. Quantity demand is sort of the number of things that you buy at a given price. Okay, so if I were to say, at $5, right? So if I plug 5 into here, 10 minus something equals 5. This thing must also be 5, right? At a price of 5, the quantity demanded equals 5. Okay, and at a price of 4, the quantity demanded equals 6. Okay, but the demand itself hasn't changed, right? This equation here hasn't changed at all, which means there's been no shift of this curve. Nothing's changed, right? The only thing that's changed are these two things here, right? We've changed the price, which has changed the quantity. Okay, so if only price and quantity are changing, there's no shifting of the curve, there's nothing going on, right? All we're doing is talking about the quantity demand, right? So if we're talking about a specific number, so today I had Panera Bread for lunch. So at $10, my quantity demanded for Panera Bread was 1, right? One meal at Panera Bread. Okay. Over the weekend, I went and saw a concert. So at $30, my quantity demanded was 1 ticket. Right? At $30, I demanded 1 ticket of the concert, and so the quantity demanded was 1. Okay. So anytime anytime you're answering a question in this class, make sure you're keeping demand and quantity demand straight. If you mix these up, which I know this sounds very semantic and annoying and awful, and I get it, I totally understand, okay, but it's very important that you keep these two things separate. Okay, if you mix them up, I'm going to get very confused about what you're talking about, and anyone listening to you is going to get very confused. It, at some level, is the source of a lot of misconceptions about economics, is a failure to keep these two things separate. So please keep these things separate. I will be grading what you write, not what you meant to write. Okay, so if you mix them up, I'm sorry, I got to mark it wrong. Okay. Now, the demand curve, as I'm sure you all know, can shift, right? So we can move the demand curve around, okay? And so if we were to increase demand, what that would do is shift it over to the right, okay? Let's see how demand shifted to the right there, all right? So that would be an increase, okay? So if we are increasing is a shift to the right, okay, not up. I'm going to underline that several times. I want you to know it. I'm even going to put it in a box. That's how important it is. It's going in a box on the right. Unlike that song, it's on the right here. Okay, not to the left, it's to the right. Okay, if you are increasing demand, you shift the curve to the right. Okay, not up, not this way, not that way, not diagonally, straight to the right. Okay. Now, what? And the opposite is also true. So if we are decreasing demand, that is a shift to the left. Okay, not down. Now we're going to do the same thing, because this is just as important as the first one. Okay, it's even going in a box. In fact, I'm going to put stars next to it. This is how important this is. I know I'm drawing your attention to it. You should never do this. Okay? That said, I fully expect that at least one of you is going to make this mistake this semester. So please don't be that person. Get these two things right. Okay? It's going right and left, not up, not down. Okay? So, what are the 6 factors that shift demand? Okay, so I list them on page 2. I'm not gonna write them down here for you. Okay, so they're on page 2 of the week 2 notes. Okay, so go look at those. But briefly, it's a change in the number of consumers. Okay, so if the number of consumers increases, what's going to happen? Well, there's going to be more people buying the product, right? So if there's more people buying it at all prices, okay, so at all prices, there's now more customers, okay, which means we're going to shift demand out to the right, which is what this means, okay? So when demand shifts to the right, what we're saying is that at all prices, more of the good is being sold, okay, than previously. Okay, so at all prices, and note that that's true at P3, right? There used to only be Q3 being sold, and now if I continue over, you can see that we almost get to Q1, right? And at P1, right, we come over, we almost get to Q2, and at P2, we're way off the chart. We're even off my scale, right? So at all prices, when demand increases, at all prices, quantity demand will be higher than it was before, okay? Which is what it means to shift demand or to increase demand, right? At all prices, more of the good is purchased, okay? So if there are more consumers, there'll be more people buying, which means that demand has increased, okay? We can have a change in tastes and preferences, okay? So I'm sure that at one point in your lives, you guys tried to eat some food that maybe you didn't like as much. You didn't care for it, okay? And today maybe you like it, okay? So my example from my life is actually spinach. When I was little, I thought spinach was absolutely disgusting. I couldn't stand it. The taste of it, the smell of it, the texture, nothing about spinach was good, okay? And today, it's actually one of my favorite foods, okay? So my tastes and preferences have changed, and as a result, my demand for spinach, which when I was little was probably at the origin, actually it was basically zero, like I would never buy spinach, right? Now my demand is positive, and I like it, okay? We can also have a change in the expected price of a good, okay? Now this one's a little bit tricky, okay? So let's say we have pens. Okay, so we have pens. This is a fancy pen. You can get them at Staples. Okay, it's like $1 per pen, or like $3 for a 3-pack or something. I can't remember. It's been a year since I bought it. So let's say it's $1 a pen. Okay, so this pen right here costs $1. Okay, it's a nice pen for $1. You'd be tough to do better. Okay, so let's say that Staples is selling these pens. Each one's $1, and you know with absolute certainty that the price of this pen is going to be $1,000 in a week, right? So you're going to be able to sell each one of these pens for $1,000 each. What would you do? Would you bother? I'm sure what I hope you would do at least is turn off this video right away and drive over to Staples and buy as many of these pens as you possibly could, right? And why would you do that? Well, because each pen is going to be making you $999 of profit, right? And so what you would want to do is drop everything and buy all the pens you could, okay? Now what's going to be happening to the market for these pens in the days leading up to them being sold for $1,000? Well, so someone's going to see you freaking out and buying as many of these pens as you possibly can. And they're going to say, I wonder what that person's doing. Why are they doing that, right? And they're going to probably ask you, and you might say, oh, no reason, right? You might try to conceal the fact that you're about to make, $1 million, right? But they might, get really suspicious and say, oh, well, there must be something really great about these pens. I'm going to have to check it out, right? And so the change, the expected price of the good rising is going to induce more people to purchase the good today, right? More people are going to want to buy the good now than they would otherwise. And as a result, the demand for pens in Big Rapids at Staples or wherever you're buying the Pilot G2 pen, right? The demand for those things is going to increase, right? So that if the expected price of the good increases, then the demand for that good today will also increase, right? Same thing with, let's say, gold, right? So if we expect that next week the price of gold is, or let's say 5 years from now, we expect the price of gold to be 20 times higher than what it is now, right? Well, what should we do? We should go out and buy gold today, right? Buy the gold, increase the demand for the gold, right? There you are, okay? Now we're going to get into a couple different things. So we're going to get into substitutes and complements. Okay, so a change in the price of a substitute good can also change the demand curve for the good. Okay, so a substitute, really briefly, right? It's not a teacher. It's not like that person that came into your high school class and monitored you while the teacher was sick. A substitute are any two, technically, or more goods that can be used for the same purpose. Okay, so classic example. You can, when you're coming to campus in the morning, you can either drive your car or you can ride your bike. Okay, some of you, it's probably easier to ride your bike than others. I live in Grand Rapids, so the idea of me riding my bike to work in the morning is a little bit absurd, but let's play with that. So let's say that right now I can either ride my bike to work or I can drive my car. Okay, I've elected to drive my car. Okay, let's imagine that Ferris offered to pay me $10,000 if I rode my bike to work one day. Let's say just once, right? So if I do it once, Ferris will give me $10,000. Okay, so now what's happened? Well, the change in price, right, for riding my bike will induce me to give up riding my car or driving my car, right? So now that Ferris is going to pay me to ride my bike, okay, they're not really going to, don't worry, your tuition dollars aren't going towards that, okay? But if they were, right, what would happen to my demand for driving my car? Would it increase? So would I want to do more of it, or would I want to do less of it, right? Well, if Ferris is going to be paying me to ride my bike, and they're going to pay me a lot of money to do it, I'm going to want to drive my car less, right? Which means the demand for cars, or in other words, the demand for gasoline, right, is going to decrease, right? Or think about, let's think about, how you get between Grand Rapids and Detroit. So let's say you wanted to go to Detroit and see your favorite band who's popular. I don't know, Justin Bieber, right? He's still popular, isn't he? So let's say Justin Bieber is playing in Detroit and you want to go see his concert, okay? And so what you can do is you can fly from Grand Rapids to Detroit, or you can drive, right? Driving is a 2 hours, about 2.5 hours maybe. Flying is about 25 minutes, okay? So which one are you going to do? Are you going to fly or are you going to drive, right? Well, obviously, most of you are probably going to drive, okay? But what if flying was only $1? Right? What if it only cost you $1 to fly to Detroit? Well, you might actually do it, right? You might hop on a plane in Grand Rapids and fly just to Detroit, which would be kind of cool, right? And so, that would be a substitute, right? And so as a result, what would happen, right? If what would happen to your demand for gasoline or for driving, right? Well, your demand for driving would also fall. Okay, same type of thing. Okay, so if the price of a substitute increases, right, you want to buy more of that good. So let's think about other examples from your life. So you guys, my assumption about college students is your utility function can be described as with two elements, right? What you're doing is you want to maximize your happiness subject to your budget constraint, and the goods that you purchase are alcohol and pizza, right? And so let's say, one of the things you like to drink is a rum and Coke. Okay, so Coke is $1 for a 2 liter. Pepsi is $1 for a 2 liter. And Coke and Pepsi are basically the same thing. I know that's a crime to some folks, but we'll just go with that. Okay, if the price of Coke increased to $20 per bottle, well, what would you do? You'd probably switch to drinking Pepsi, right? And so if the price of Coke increased, your demand for Pepsi would increase, as you would switch to drinking Pepsi. Okay, and if the price of Coke fell, your demand for Pepsi would also decrease. Okay, so price and demand, in the case of substitutes, move in the same direction. If the price of a substitute increases, your demand for that first good increases. Okay, when the price of a substitute decreases, your demand for that good will also decrease. Okay, the other good, or the other flip side, are what we call complements. Okay, and a complement or complements are any two or more goods that you consume or use together. Okay, so any two or more goods that you consume or use together. Okay, and so what are some examples of this? Well, hot dogs and hot dog buns. Okay, if the price of hot dogs rises, do you want to buy more or fewer hot dog buns? Okay, so the answer is fewer, right? And because the reason why is because what are you going to do with hot dog buns if you don't have hot dogs? Right? There's nothing to really do with them. Okay, and so if you're buying fewer hot dogs, you need fewer hot dog buns. Okay, but what if the price of hot dogs falls? Well, what do you want to do then? You're going to want to buy more hot dogs, and by extension, you want to buy more hot dog buns, right? And so here's how we can show it. So let's imagine this is the market for hot dog buns, right? If the price of hot dogs falls, so the price of hot dogs decreases, your demand for hot dog buns will increase because you're going to want to buy more hot dog buns to go with your hot dogs. Okay? And if the price of hot dogs rises, your demand for hot dog buns is going to decrease, right? It'll shift to the left, okay? And so and the reason again is because if you're buying fewer hot dogs, you need fewer hot dog buns, right? Okay, so complements, right? The price rises, you buy less of the complementary good. And if the price falls, you buy more of the complementary good, okay? And the last thing, the sixth factor that shifts demand, is a change in income. Okay, now this one is a little bit trickier because it can actually go in both ways. Okay, and so let's say that after you graduate from Ferris, right, you get an annual salary of $250,000 a year, right, which is clearly because you took this class with me. And so if you want to get some, kick some of that money back here, I will not object. Okay, so let's say you're earning $250,000 a year, right? Are you going to eat out at restaurants more often or less often, right, than you do now? Okay, and my guess is that you're going to eat out at restaurants more often. Maybe not all the time, but at least a little bit more. Okay. And so what that would be, right, is the change in income has increased your demand for restaurants. Okay, so we have what are called normal goods, right, which as your income rises, demand also rises. All right, so as you have more money, you buy more of these things. Okay, so restaurants are a good example. Cars are a good example, right? Personal computers might be a good example, or high-end cell phones, right? Those might be good examples as well. Okay, so anything that as your income rises, you buy more of, we call a normal good. But what about things like ramen noodles? So how many of you have eaten ramen noodles, let's say in the last month, right? My guess is that if we were in person, almost all of you would be raising your hands right now, which is fine, right? There's no judgment there, okay? Or how many of you have had Natty Light or Steel Reserve or Road Dog or whatever the other cheap beers are, right? You drink those things. You know why? Well, they're beer and they're cheap, okay? But do you think like Bill Gates is eating ramen noodles and drinking Natty Light, right? Do you think Mark Zuckerberg is eating these foods and drinking these drinks? Of course not, okay? So some goods, as your income goes up, you actually will buy less of them. Ramen noodles are sort of the classic example. And we call these things inferior goods, which I know it sounds like I'm judging them, and I'm saying that they are lower quality or something like that. And typically they are lower quality, but the term or the phrase is not meant to connote anything about their quality at all. Okay, an inferior good is literally just anything that as your income rises, you buy less of it. Okay, so income rises, demand decreases. Okay, and that's all it is. It could be anything. So let's say that that you get laid off from your job, so your income has fallen. Oh shoot, I messed up. Sorry, I was copying the above here. This is falls. Nope, I was right. Sorry. Rises. Okay, so both of these work in the opposite direction. Sorry, I got myself confused a little bit there. Okay, so these also work in the opposite direction. So if your income falls, your demand for normal goods will fall. And if your income falls, your demand for inferior goods will actually increase. Okay, so here's like a tricky example. Let's say that you are at home and you have cable. Okay, so you're watching cable television. You know, you go to work all day and you come home and you watch cable television and then you go to sleep. Okay. Then let's say you lose your job. Okay, regrettably, you know, your boss just lets you go. It's a bad time. You just gotta let you go. So you get fired. Economists would say that your income has decreased. Okay, and so what if, as a result of your income decreasing, you cancel your cable subscription and purchase a Netflix account? Okay, because you still want to watch some television, but you don't want to pay the full cable price. Okay, well, in that world, the cable would be a normal good because your income fell, and your demand, and with it, your demand fell as well. Okay, so your income fell, and so too did your demand. So it's a normal good. And the Netflix account is actually an inferior good, right? Because you didn't have it before, and your income fell, and your demand for that thing increased, right? And so cable is a normal good in that scenario, and Netflix is an inferior good in that example, which is a bit strange, right? But we can imagine that happening. Okay, it's not saying that Netflix is inferior to cable, right? It just says that for Netflix, as this person demonstrated, Netflix must be an inferior good. Their income fell, and so they bought more of it. Must be inferior. Okay, I'm going to stop this video there. We'll go on and talk about supply in the next video.